next topic I want to get to is Emmett Till is back in the news again, right? This past Tuesday, July 25th, would have been the 76th birthday of Emmett Till. 76th birthday of Emmett Till, okay? And Emmett Till was 14 years old when he was killed in Money, Mississippi, August 25th, 1955, the morning of August 25th, 1955. So we're going to deal with some of the history of Emmett Till, give you the background story, and then talk about the article from theroot.com from Tuesday, July 25th by Brianna Edwards. Today would have been Emmett Till's 76th birthday if a white woman didn't lie on him. Today would have been Emmett Till's 76th birthday if a white woman didn't lie on him. Okay, very, very, very good article here also. All right, so when we look at the history of Emmett Till, right, blackpast.org has a good article about this. So Emmett Till was a 14-year-old African-American boy. He was tortured and killed in Money, Mississippi, okay, after allegedly insulting a white woman. All right, now Emmett Till was from Chicago, okay, and he lived with his mother, Mamie Till. His father, Louis Till, died while serving in the U.S. Army in Italy in 1945. Okay, Emmett Till goes down to Money, Mississippi in the summer of 1955 to go visit his 64-year-old great uncle, Mose Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T, and the family, Mose Wright. Okay, so you have rampant segregation going on in Mississippi at the time. All right. Rampant segregation going on in Mississippi at the time. All right. And please share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. OK. So Emmett Till isn't used to this. He's from Chicago. OK. He isn't used to this. So before he leaves, his mother, Mamie Till, tells him to follow Southern customs and mind his manners. But having grown up in a northern city like Chicago, Emmett Till was unaware of the legacy of lynching and the rigid social caste system in the South. Okay. So on August 24th, 1955, while at a local grocery store with his cousins, Emmett Till reportedly left the store whistling at the white female clerk. Her name was Carolyn Bryant. Okay. And she was part owner of the store. All right. She owned the store with her husband, Roy Bryant. All right. He was 24 years old at the time. So soon after this incident, Roy Bryant and his half brother, J.W. Millam, appeared at Mose Wright's cabin around 2:30 a.m. OK, 2:30 a.m., which would have been the next morning, August 25th, 1955. So the armed men kidnapped Emmett Till, and they say they wanted to talk to the boy. OK, who was at that store. And they said they just wanted to talk to him. If you watch Eyes on the Prize, in the first chapter of Eyes on the Prize, they deal with the killing of Emmett Till, because this killing gained international attention, international media attention. The funeral of Emmett Till gained international media attention also. And Jet Magazine put the picture of Emmett Till laying in the open casket. They put that on the cover of Jet Magazine so people could see what was done to Emmett Till also. OK, so these two armed white supremacists, they slashed out one of Emmett Till's eyes and tied a 100-pound cotton gin fan around his neck with barbed wire. And Emmett Till was severely beaten and shot in the head and thrown into the Tallahatchie River. OK. Now, some sources say it's 70 or 75-pound cotton gin, okay, around his neck. All right. Now, two fishermen found Emmett Till's mutilated and unrecognizable corpse 3 days later. Mamie Till, his mother, who later remarries and was known as Mamie Till Bradley, she immediately requested her son's bloated, mutilated body be returned to Chicago and displayed in an open casket funeral at Robert's Temple Church of God in Christ. And she said, quote, "I wanted the world to see what they did to my son. I wanted the world to see what they did to my son." This is why they had an open casket funeral. Okay. So there's tens of thousands of people lined up to view the body at the mortuary, and over 50,000 mourners attended the funeral services days later. Now, this killing of Emmett Till gained international attention. All right. Definitely national attention, but also international attention. Okay. Now, Emmett Till's murder symbolized for many African Americans the inherent racism and disparity of justice they continue to face in the aftermath of World War II, because a lot of African American men who served in World War II, when they come back home, World War II ends in 1945. When they come back home, they're saying, look, we're not going to take the same segregation or racism and discrimination that we dealt with before we went to the war. They said we fought for this country. We shed our blood for this country. Some of us died, and we want full citizenship right now. We want all of our rights right now. Okay. And these are going to be some things that precipitate the civil rights movement, which many people start the modern day civil rights movement with the Montgomery bus boycott, December 5th, 1955. But some people started with the killing of Emmett Till and the trial of Roy Bryant and J.W. Millam after the killing of Emmett Till. So some people started with Emmett Till in 1955, the modern day civil rights movement. All right. So because of the media, and particularly the coverage by African-American press, because African-American press was crucial to covering the killing of Emmett Till and then also the trial as well. The murder of Emmett Till gained national and international attention that prompted public disclosure on segregation, racial violence, and social, political, and economic equality. So this caused a problem for America on the international scene that wants to chastise other governments for human rights violations, but you have these human rights violations going on in the land of the free and the home of the brave. You have rampant segregation going on in the South. Now, this is also the year after Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision in 1954. And then right after the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision, you're going to have the White Citizens Council that's created in Mississippi in 1954 as a direct backlash to that, because they want to keep segregation in place. And the White Citizens Council is going to be made up of white businessmen, white landowners, plantation owners, bankers, politicians, things like this. These are going to be like the Ku Klux Klan without the sheets. And they have a lot of political power. They're going to get people elected to political office. And in Mississippi, the White Citizens Council, so the White Citizens Council spreads all throughout Mississippi, and it spreads all throughout the South also. Okay, so the White Citizens Council helps Ross Barnett become elected as governor of Mississippi. And then when Medgar Evers is shot and killed by Byron Della Beckwith, June 12th, 1963, in Jackson, Mississippi, right outside of Medgar Evers' house, he's shot in the back by Byron Della Beckwith, who was a member of the White Citizens Council in Mississippi. There were 2 trials for Byron Della Beckwith initially, and they were mistrials. At one of those trials, Ross Barnett, the governor of Mississippi, who was put in office partially by the White Citizens Council, is seen shaking hands of Byron Della Beckwith after one of the mistrials, and he's shaking hands with them and smiling. And Byron Della Beckwith was a member of the White Citizens Council also. When you look at the Montgomery bus boycott, right? The Montgomery bus boycott, what ended it was not what ended segregation on the buses was not the Montgomery bus boycott, which lasted 381 days from December 5th, 1955 to December 20th, 1956. It was not the bus boycott. It was the lawsuit of Browder versus Gale, filed February 1st, 1956 by attorney Fred Gray, that goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. It was that lawsuit that ended segregation on the buses, because the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that segregation on the buses was unconstitutional. And I've written articles about this. You can read my articles at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I've written articles that document this. Okay. And also I have a 2-hour presentation, 2-hour lecture that I did called The Distortion of the Legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The Revolutionary Will Not Be Televised. The Distortion of the Legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The Revolutionary Will Not Be Televised. Okay. And you can order all my lectures. I have 35 of my DVD lectures at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, my website. Okay. And keep in mind, this is some of the information I deal with in the online course that I teach. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. We normally meet on Fridays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can tune in from around the world. All the sessions are recorded, so if you miss anything, you can go back and watch it over and over again. So we just posted a link here on our Facebook fan page. On the thread. It's also on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, on the homepage. As soon as you register, you can watch the first 4 classes, and there's 12 hours of bonus content. The course is only $40. Okay. So when you look at the plaintiffs in the case, right? Browder versus Gale. The plaintiffs in the case are Aurelia S. Browder, Claudette Colvin, who 9 months before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus. Also, you have Mary Louise Smith and Susie McDonald. You have 4 African-American women who were the plaintiffs in this landmark Supreme Court case. Who was the defendant? Gale, G-A-Y-L-E. William A. Gale, who was the mayor of Montgomery, Alabama at the time. Okay. William A. Gale, who was the governor, who was the mayor of Montgomery, Alabama at the time. Okay. Well, in January of 1956, Mayor William Gale joins the White Citizens Council. Okay. He joins the White Citizens Council, and he encourages other white people in Montgomery, Alabama, to join the White Citizens Council also. He openly encourages other white people in Montgomery, Alabama, to join the White Citizens Council as well. Okay. So you gotta understand this history and understand what they were facing, what they were dealing with. A lot of our people talk about what they would have done back then and all that stuff if they would have been there. Most of them ain't even doing that stuff today. All the opposition we're dealing with today, most of those people who say today what they would have done back then ain't even doing that today. So, all right. So when you do, so you have Emmett Till in Mississippi, who's killed August 25th, 1955. You have Medgar Evers, who's killed in Mississippi, June 12th, 1963. But also you have Fannie Lou Hamer coming out of Mississippi as well. Okay. Freedom fighter Fannie Lou Hamer also. Okay. So because of when we look at Emmett Till and the trial of the 2 white men who killed Emmett Till, Roy Bryant and J.W. Millam, because of the media and particularly the coverage from African-American media, African-American press, the murder gained national and international attention that prompted public discourse on segregation, okay, racial violence, and social, political, and economic equality also. All right. So in September of 1955, Mamie Till, Emmett Till's mother, came to Mississippi for the trial under heavy protection from advisors and relatives. All right. And when you watch Eyes on the Prize, they talk about how the courtroom was segregated. They had the African-American press on one side of the room. They had the white press on the other side of the room. Okay, as well. It was an all-white jury also. So a lot of African-Americans who were from the North and hadn't been to Mississippi before, it was a total culture shock to them. okay, to see this. So you're going to have the two white men. They're going to be found not guilty, of course, all white jury. All right. And you have a number of prominent outside observers who attended the trial. You're going to have Michigan Congressman Charles Diggs Jr., who's a legend here in Detroit, in the state of Michigan. Mamie Till and Mose Wright testified in court. Emmett Till's great uncle, Mose Wright. They testified in court. And the prosecutor, I'm sorry, the defense for the two white men tried to discredit Mamie Till. And they said that Mamie Till took out an insurance policy on Emmett Till and purposely sent him to Mississippi to be killed. And they said that the body of Emmett Till that was found was not actually Emmett Till, but they said it was a cadaver that was planted by the NAACP. This is what the defense argued. Okay. And you have to understand the NAACP was very powerful in the South. They were hated by white supremacists. You could be fired from your job for being a member of the NAACP. They were hated by the White Citizens Council, by the segregationists, by the white supremacists. Okay. Let me repeat what happened. The defense for J.W. Millam and Roy Bryant, the two white men who killed Emmett Till, they argued that Emmett Till's mother took out an insurance policy on Emmett Till and purposely sent him to Mississippi to be killed. And they argued that the body of Emmett Till that was found was not actually Emmett Till, but it was actually a cadaver that was planted by the NAACP. This is their argument. Now, at this time, historically, no jury in the state of Mississippi had ever convicted a white person for killing an African-American person if the crime involved sexual aggressions towards a white woman. The all-white, all-male jury deliberated for only 67 minutes after acquitting the two men. 4 months later, Roy Bryant and J.W. Millam admitted to murdering Emmett Till to journalist William Bradford Huey for an article for Look magazine. And they received $4,000 for their interview, and they admitted to killing Emmett Till in the interview after they were acquitted for his murder. But because of double jeopardy, right? Because of double jeopardy, they could not be tried. They could not be tried again. So they got away with it. So many grassroots and local activists thereafter saw Emmett Till's murder and trial as a call to action that helped galvanize the modern day civil rights movement. Okay. So you had a development earlier in the year, and we talked about this on the African History Network show. You had, let's see, Vanity Fair magazine had an article, January 26, 2017, how author Timothy Tyson found the woman at the center of the Emmett Till case, how author Timothy Tyson found the woman at the center of the Emmett Till case. Okay. So you had Carolyn Bryant, who remarried, and she admitted to you. So you have a new book coming out called The Blood of Emmett Till, The Blood of Emmett Till. Okay. And the author of the book did an interview with her 10 years prior. And she admitted that part of her testimony she made up. Okay. In a new book, The Blood of Emmett Till, she admits that part of her, let's see, She admits part of her testimony was made up. She said that part was not true. She told Timothy Tyson about her claim that Emmett Till had made verbal and physical advances on her. Okay, she lied about this in her testimony. Emmett Till, one of his cousins, said that he said to the woman, "Bye, baby," when he was leaving the store, "Bye, baby," and he whistled at her. Okay, so that part is true, but the part of him making verbal and physical, being verbally abusive and making a physical advance to her, that part was a lie. Okay. As for the rest of what happened that evening in the country store, she said she couldn't remember. Okay. And that was at the time of the interview. All right. But she admitted that part of her testimony was a lie. Okay. And it appears this is a part of the lie she told her husband about what happened also. Now, in this article from Vanity Fair, check out this article once again, how author Timothy Tyson found the woman at the center of the Emmett Till case. This is from January 26, 2017. Okay. On the witness stand, Carolyn Bryant had asserted that Emmett Till grabbed her and verbally threatened her. She said that while she was unable to utter the quote unquote unprintable word that he had used, okay, as one of the defense lawyers put it, quote, he said he had done something with white women before. Okay, this is what she said. Then she added, "I was just scared to death." Quote unquote, "I was just scared to death." A version of her damning allegation was also made by the defendant's lawyers to reporters. The jury did not hear Carolyn's words because the judge had dismissed them from the courtroom, had dismissed the jurors from the courtroom while she spoke, ruling that her testimony was not relevant to the actual murder. But the court spectators heard her, and her testimony was put on the record because the defense wanted her words as evidence in a possible appeal in the event that the defendants were convicted. Okay. But it appears this is the story that she also told her husband, which then prompted he and his brother-in-law to go kidnap Emmett Till and ultimately kill him. Now, when you watch Eyes on the Prize, they have, if I remember correctly, in Eyes on the Prize, they have an interview with, they interviewed Huey, what's his name? William Huey. Okay. The reporter who did the interview for Look magazine, William Bradford Huey. They interview him in Eyes on the Prize. And he said that one of the guys said that when they had Emmett Till in the back seat of the car, they were just going to rough him up, beat him, what have you. They didn't plan to kill him. But Emmett Till said something. I think something about him having a white girlfriend up in Chicago or something. He said something, and then that prompted them to kill Emmett Till. Okay, watch Eyes on the Prize. Watch Eyes on the Prize. Very, very important. Very, very important piece of work there. Eyes on the Prize. Excellent documentary. They have some clips on YouTube also. They have some clips of Eyes on the Prize on YouTube. Okay, so this was a big story in January 2017. To come to find out after all these years, right? Carolyn Bryant lied about some of her testimony, and the most damaging testimony she lied about because Emmett Till did not verbally abuse her and did not grab her. That was a lie. That was made up. Okay. And then you also have the Justice Department debating about whether to reopen the Emmett Till murder case as well. NBCnews.com has an article about that. Justice Department considering reopening Emmett Till murder case. Justice Department considering reopening Emmett Till murder case, family says. Okay, you can research that. That's from NBCnews.com. TheRoot.com has an article from January 27th. Woman who calls Emmett Till's death admits to lying. Woman who calls Emmett Till's death admits to lying. And in the article with Vanity Fair, Carolyn Bryant said, quote, "Nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him. Nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him." Okay. All right. So now you have this past Tuesday was the birthday, would have been the 76th birthday of Emmett Till if this white woman hadn't lied on him. So the Root.com has an article from Brianna Edwards. Today would have been Emmett Till's 76th birthday if a white woman didn't lie on him. Okay. This is from July 25th, 2017. July 25th, 2017. And in the article, she talks about how the revelation that came out earlier this year. Carolyn Bryant is now 82 years old, and she confessed 10 years ago to author Timothy Tyson, a Duke University senior research scholar who was working on the book, The Blood of Emmett Till. She confessed that part of her testimony was a lie. Okay. And they also talk about here in the article that the Justice Department is kicking around the idea of reopening the case. We know the family of Emmett Till has met with the Justice Department recently with Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and that Attorney General Jeff Sessions expressed his support for pursuing and prosecuting those involved, which is a shock because he's a Southern segregationist from Alabama. However, most African Americans are skeptical about Jeff Sessions' willingness to truly dig into the old case. Okay. So check out this article also from TheRoot.com dealing with the 76th birthday of Emmett Till as well. Okay. And this is, a real tragedy, but it's a piece of our history. And we really need to study this because this was really the beginnings of the modern day civil rights movement. Okay, really the beginnings of the modern day civil rights movement, the killing of Emmett Till and what happened after that. And when you look at Medgar Evers, right? People don't understand. One of the things the NAACP did was investigations into killings and attacks on African Americans and gather evidence for the authorities, etc. So when we look at Medgar Evers, with the aid of NAACP Mississippi Field Secretary Medgar Evers and other Black activists, what they did was they went and sought out witnesses involved in who had knowledge of what happened at the store, knowledge of surrounding the killing of Emmett Till. Okay, and they gathered this information to help the prosecution in the case. Okay. And because of them, they were able to gather this information and prosecution produced compelling evidence. Okay. This is something that the NAACP was involved in. And Medgar Evers was the field secretary for the NAACP in Mississippi. One of the things he did was help African Americans register to vote in Mississippi, because the overwhelming majority of them were not registered to vote. Because you could be fired for your job just for registering to vote in Mississippi back at that time. When you study Fannie Lou Hamer, her family, she was the youngest of 20 children, if I remember correctly, youngest of either 19 or 20 children. Her family was sharecroppers in Mississippi. And when she registered to vote, she got fired from her job on the plantation, not because she voted, but because she registered to vote. This is what can happen to you just for registering to vote. in Mississippi back at that time, back in the 1960s, back in 1950s. This is before the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Okay. So this, we really need to study the civil rights movement. A lot of people think they know about it. Most people really don't understand the civil rights movement, and then also don't understand the transition of Dr. King from civil rights to human rights. Because after the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, he transitions from 66 to 68 from civil rights to human rights. And what he was trying to do is get African Americans in the South to the level that they were in the North, and then go from civil rights to human rights. Because in the South, in many ways, they were far behind those in the North, even though those in the North were still dealing with segregation, but it was segregation to a lesser extent. You didn't have the colored only signs for the most part, the white signs, color only signs, things like this. But just here in Detroit, they were dealing with rampant segregation here in Detroit. You would have restrictive covenants across the country. You have things like restrictive covenants, which were written into the deeds of white homeowners that said they could not sell the house or rent the house to African Americans. You had housing discrimination that locked African Americans out of buying homes in certain areas and also getting loans to buy homes. So you see this with the Federal Housing Administration, which was created in 1934. So all this deals with politics and deals with government policies that help create the segregation, help create ghettos, and help maldistribute wealth and resources into the hands of Europeans. Okay, I encourage people to read the book How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. I encourage people to read that book. And then also, that's from the Nation of Islam Research Group. You can go to NOIRG.org. I think it is Nation of Islam Research Group, or go to finalcall.com. Finalcall.com. You can probably get it there also. And then also read the four-part article, four-part series they have at finalcall.com called Hard Work or Hardly Working, How White Folks Got So Rich. Hard Work or Hardly Working, How White Folks Got So Rich. Okay. And that is an overview of that book as well. Okay. All right. So if you have a question or comment, give us a call, 914-338-1375. Press the number 1 key to put you in queue so we can bring you on the air. 914-338-1375. Press the number 1 key to put you in queue so we can bring you on the air. You listen to the African History Network show. We're broadcasting on the Blog Talk Radio Network. We're also broadcasting on Facebook Live or Facebook fan page, the African History Network, the African History Network. If you like this type of information, you can register for our online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. And this deals with thousands of years of history. We deal with history leading up to the transatlantic slave trade to better understand it. You can also go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com as well, register for that also. And we deal with ancient Egypt. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. We deal with all that type of information. We deal with a lot of history in the class. We deal with Christopher Columbus and the role that Christopher Columbus played in the transatlantic slave trade. When we study our history, we study transatlantic slave trade. We can't start in 1619, August 20, 1619. We know that anniversary is coming up soon, August 20, 1619. A lot of people think that African people first came to this land at that time. No, that's not true. We've been here at least 51,700 years. We've been here in the land we call the United States of America. We've been here at least 51,700 years. And when you study the work from Dr. David Imhotep, who I've interviewed a number of times, and also, all these radio shows, we have them podcasted. So if you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on the link on the homepage, listen to the podcast. We have almost 800 archive episodes. Okay, almost 800 archive episodes. So you can check those out there. But you can listen to the interviews I've done with Dr. David Imhotep, author of the book, The First Americans Were Africans Documented Evidence. The First Americans Were Africans Documented Evidence. Okay. And here's Dr. David Imhotep here. So his groundbreaking book came out in 2011. And in his book, he deals with a African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years. And he deals with the discovery from Dr. Albert Goodyear. Okay. So Dr. Albert Goodyear in 2004, who was an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina, Dr. Albert Goodyear made a discovery in Allendale County, South Carolina, and they found evidence, overwhelming evidence of an African presence here. So this deals with the Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet. Okay, the Khoisan, coming from Southern Africa, also called the Khoikhoi. They are the ancestors to the Ainu and Twa. But they found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. They found 14 different disciplines thoroughly documenting an African presence in this country we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago. Okay. And then if you look at the article from ScienceDaily.com from November 18th, 2004, called New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 years ago. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Now, this is from 13 years ago. Okay, this deals with Dr. Albert Goodyear's groundbreaking archaeological discovery that at the time flipped the archaeological world upside down. And one of the things we do with in the course is we deal with archaeological discoveries, including some of the recent archaeological discoveries, because these discoveries are happening all the time. And mainstream media is reporting on them because I show you articles from mainstream media. Okay. One of the most recent archaeological discoveries was revealed April 26, 2017 of mastodon skeletons, a mastodon skeleton, which is a prehistoric animal, precursor to the elephant. Mastodon skeleton found in San Diego that paleontologists are saying dates back 130,000 years ago. And they said that that it was the skeleton was smashed with stone tools, okay? And they're saying it was smashed with stone tools by humans. Now, if this is true, what this does is this puts a human presence in North America over 100,000 years before modern archaeology tells us humans were here. Because the oldest human site that modern archaeologists cites here in North America is the Clovis culture site from New Mexico that dates back about 13,000 years ago. But you have many of our scholars like Dr. David Imhotep, Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Charles Finch, and others who are saying modern man, Homo sapiens, modern man is not 75,000 or 100,000 years old, but at least 300,000 years old. Okay. So if this is true with a human presence in North America going back 130,000 years ago, this would fall in line with what many of our scholars have been saying. Then in Morocco, in early June of 2017, they found skeletons of modern man, Homo sapiens. Now we're Homo sapiens sapiens, but still under the classification of Homo sapien, which is modern man. They found skeletons of modern man in Morocco that they say date back 300,000 to 350,000 years ago, which falls in line with what Dr. David Imhotep and other scholars have been saying. And you listen to my interviews with him, we deal with this. It falls in line with that. The discovery in Morocco flipped the archaeological world upside down. The reason why is because the oldest fossil of modern man that archaeology has dates back 195,000 years ago in Ethiopia, found in Ethiopia. This is of Homo sapiens. This is not talking about Lucy who Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen called Dinknesh. Okay. The remains of Lucy is an older form of humans called Australopithecus afarensis, which dates back approximately 3.2 million years ago. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about modern man. Okay. The oldest human fossils of modern man date back 195,000 years ago in Ethiopia. Well, the ones in Morocco date back over 100,000 years before that. So when these discoveries come out, they keep having to push dates back. And if you listen to me, you listen to my presentation, see my lectures, I talk about how the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets. The more research they do, the older we get. The deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets. The more research they do, the older we get. Okay. So Juvenile had a song years ago called Back That Thing Up. And when these archaeological discoveries come out, they keep having to back that thing up. They keep having to back these dates up. Okay. And the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. So if you look at this article from ScienceDaily.com from November 18, 2004, 13 years ago, new evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. It says a synopsis of the article says radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. Well, this flips the archaeological world upside down. They've been trying to discredit this discovery for years, but then you have other archaeological discoveries that fall in line with this and possibly push this date back even further. Okay, so there is a concerted effort to try to suppress this type of information, because what you're dealing with is the fact that African people were here in the land we call the United States of America before Native Americans came into existence. African people were here in the land we call the United States of America before Native Americans came into existence, because the people who we call Native Americans are the offspring of an intermixing of Africans who had been here for tens of thousands of years, and Native American Africans who've been here for tens of thousands of years, and Asians who come here around 3000 BC. And the Africans and Asians intermix, and their offspring are who we call Native Americans. Their offspring are who we call Native Americans. Okay, so this is what you're dealing with. And then when European settlers come to this land, many of the indigenous African groups or African nations, a lot of them get reclassified as Native Americans. So if you don't understand this history, you don't know what you're looking for or what you're looking at. Okay. And so there were millions of African people who were already here before the transatlantic slave trade started. I'm not saying the transatlantic slave trade didn't happen. I'm saying it didn't happen the way we've been taught that it happened. It didn't happen the way we've been taught that it happened. Okay. Transatlantic slave trade happened, but it didn't happen the way we have been taught that it happened. So you have to understand this history, because once again, what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. You have a different outlook on life and outlook on you and people who look like you, when you understand that this was your land stolen away from you, as opposed to thinking you are a guest in this land. No, we're not a guest in this land. This was our land. We were here first. This was our land stolen from us. So then that changes how we teach our history. That changes how we teach our children. That is ultimately going to change how this history is taught in the schools. That's ultimately going to change how this history is taught in the schools, because truth crushed to the earth rises again. Okay. And ultimately the truth comes out. So this is what we're dealing with. Okay. 914-338-1375 is the call-in number. If you have a question or comment, press the number 1 key to put you in queue. If you want to go on the air, and you can listen by phone also. The same number, 914-338-1375, 914-338-1375. But this is some of the type of information we deal with in our online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. There's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. We do it on Fridays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And all the sessions are recorded. If you miss anything, you can go back and watch it over and over again. As soon as you register, you can watch the first 4 sessions. And then also, we have 12 hours of bonus content also. Okay. So it's a ton of information in the online course. The course is only $40. All right. So you can register for that. Okay. Let's continue. So we're coming up on the break here. When we come back, we're going to deal with this story about the creators of Game of Thrones. The creators have come up with a brilliant idea to have a new series called Confederate that looks at what would America be like if the Civil War, if the South won the Civil War. What would it look like if the South won the Civil War and slavery still existed? What would it look like if the South won the Civil War and slavery still existed? Now, you want to do something like this in the era of Donald Trump, and you have a rampant rise of white supremacy. White supremacy already existed, but no, it's on steroids now. It's on steroids. It's more out in the open. It's more accepted. And if you study the Southern Poverty Law Center, you've seen a huge increase in the number of hate crimes directed towards African Americans, Hispanics, Muslims, Arabs, things like this. Even those of the Sikh faith, S-I-K-H, who people mistake for Arabs. Okay. And you want to have a weekly TV show about this, not a documentary, a weekly TV show. But you can't just blame these 2 white creators, David Benioff and D.B. Wise, because you have 2 African-American producers who are involved in this nonsense also, Nichelle Tramble Spellman and Malcolm Spellman. Okay, so we'll deal with this on the other side of the break. Those on Facebook, we're about to stop broadcasting. We're going to have a new broadcast starting up, so stay tuned. It's to the African History Network show.